Finding Common Battlegrounds is an attempt by two brothers, one conservative, the other progressive, to have civil conversations about politics with a little help from their friends.
All right, everybody, welcome to our favorite podcast, Finding Common Battlegrounds. This is the podcast that we've dedicated to political debate, but it's in a civilized format where we try to find common grounds. And we've got representation from both sides, both liberals and conservative viewpoints that we try to harmonize, trying to find some harmonious middle ground where
Beautiful.
No, that needs work.
But, yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's probably true.
We used to do that at dinner. There's 9 kids in our family. So we would start this thing where the youngest, Wendy, would go, "Thanks, Mom and Dad," for dinner.
That's right. We
would all harmonize. We would try to harmonize. Yeah. So there's 9 of us trying to harmonize. It always sounded terrible, but it was funny. We did it all the time.
Yes. So talking about their childhood, both Ryan and Josh Cragen, brothers, but otherwise polar opposites on the ideological spectrum. Josh is our conservative and Ryan is our flaming liberal. Tonight we're going to be talking about the rings of power. Are they too woke? Did they go too far? And this, so I'm pretty excited about that. To talk about this. So we've all watched at least one episode of the series, and we're gonna be talking about this. Our sponsor, Lux Bidets. If you're not I was reading an article about a person who went 3 months with a bidet. They were like trying out all the bidets for like some research project, a bunch of bidets, but they basically said, "I'm never going back." Never going back, like to never going back to traditional toilets.
Like
the only weird thing is it took 3 months. It took a week for me. Like the first time, disclaimer, the first time you're like, "Ooh, I need to talk to my bishop." That was weird. I don't know how I feel about that. But after a week, you can't go back.
Yeah, they were saying like basically like, yeah, like I can almost kind of appalled that they've been doing it, wiping with toilet paper all their lives.
Preach, brother, preach.
All right. So would it be anachronistic if they had bidets in the rings of power, or would we all be okay with that? Because it's like,
I'd totally be okay with that. Absolutely.
They just have to be like rock-hewn elven bidets or dwarven bidets, right? So
the dwarves would be rock-hewn. The elves, they could just have like these pretty fountains and stuff. That'd be weird if the orcs had them.
So we're going to be doing our 3-question format which is our pretty typical format we've been doing, and which is that both of the debaters have prepared 3 questions that they're going to ask each other and try to get the other to agree. If they get the other party to agree, they get brownie points. So that's sort of our goal. We'll just it's usually let's see. Just a little background. Background is the Rings of Power are J.R.R. Tolkien's books that are based on Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So this is like a few thousand years ago. And if you're a big Tolkien buff, then you know that they've taken a few liberties. They've kind of this is like they've taken like a few thousand years and kind of merged them into they've taken a lot of events in this thing and kind of put them all together. But where the kind of backlash and stuff has come out is in some of the casting and casting choices where they put there is a black elf. There is a black dwarf. There is a black hobbit. There is a black. I think there was black humans. I saw. There's basically a clear thought put into putting representation in for everyone in Middle Earth, which, if you've read the books, elves, there weren't any black elves in the original book, and so okay, we'll get into that, but. And I will just say, so this is kind of some of the, so I'll just basically go in so this has kind of been there was some backlash in the reviews that it's so much so that Amazon suspended the ratings for a few days, and then also there's been a few number of articles and people have kind of come out. I guess Whoopi Goldberg was saying that was trashing these fans, saying that they need to chill out and stuff like that. But so it's just been in the news a lot of like, so is this appropriate? Are the fans overreacting? Did the producers go too far? We're going to talk about that. So, all right. Easiest way to do this is to jump into a first question and just get things going. Okay. All right. Let's get. Should we go into Ryan's question here? Yeah, let's try this. All right, Josh, can we agree that the concerns about wokeness are tied to race and gender?
All right, so this is about finding common ground, right? So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page as we get started right out of the gate here. So I want to be clear as we're discussing this, because maybe my points are all kind of misguided, right? About what the wokeness concerns are. So are the wokeness concerns related to A, there are elves who are not white, including Arundel, who is a badass elf who is darker skinned. And if you haven't seen, episodes 2 and 3, he is pretty awesome. And B, there are strong female characters who can fight. Of note, just to be clear, there are not, as of episode 3, any gay, bisexual, or transgender characters in the story. So can we just agree that the concerns about wokeness at this point are tied to race and gender?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's not like the only concern. I'll get to like the overarching big picture concern with my third point. But yeah, I'll give you agreement on that.
All right.
Those are my 2 points. My first 2 points, actually.
Ding, ding.
Okay, then let's talk about them.
Okay. Well, let's, Josh. All right. We'll get into Josh's question. Ryan.
Nope.
Tom. Would you agree that this is a question for me, I guess.
What?
Would you agree that the woke scold social justice warriors ruin all the things?
Ryan will never agree to this. And we're supposed to find common ground, so I'll find it with Tom. He's never going to agree to this.
Oh boy.
Okay,
wow.
I just wanted to start with a cheap shot to set the tone, but I'm just having fun with this one tonight. Okay, so I want to talk about the opening scene with Galadriel. Okay, so if you've seen it, spoiler alerts. If you haven't watched it,
we should say spoiler alerts. Yeah,
maybe stop the podcast and go watch it if you care. So the opening scene, they're like scaling cliffs and it's icy and it actually looks cool. The cinematography in this show is unbelievably good. The backgrounds in the show,
most
unbelievably good.
Movie or TV,
almost $1 billion.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
And that's why this is so frustrating. Okay, so they go into this cave and it's Galadriel leading this bunch of elves, and I think they're all dudes. And they run into an ice troll, right? Mm-hmm. And right off the bat, the ice troll, he's huge. He probably weighs 2 tons, right? He throws a rock that weighs, 700 pounds. Hits 3 elves, knocks them down, and then he's beating up all the rest of the elves. Like he is smashing these dudes. He's punching them and kicking them. He picks one up and slams him against a rock wall, and they're trying to fight, and they don't even scratch him, don't even touch him. And then Galadriel's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. She walks over to him, turns into a ninja, and just eviscerates the troll. Okay, she's pretty cool. The rest of these guys can't touch the troll, but she's pretty dang cool. So I watched this as the fight's going on. I'm like, well, it looks pretty good. Not bad. These guys are getting their butts kicked. And then I realized, one, none of these dudes are dying. They're not even hurt. Okay. At the end of the fight, the elf that got picked up like a doll and slammed into the wall, he's fine. He's just like, oh, my back hurts a little bit. He's fine. So one, the fight scene is so stupid. If you get hit by a 700-pound rock, Ryan, are you gonna walk that off?
We have a friend who had a 700-pound rock crush his leg on a hike. He didn't walk it off.
Exactly.
Fun story for another time.
Yeah, I actually want to hear that. That's scary. Okay. So this is the opening scene. And when I saw this, I went, oh crap, for two reasons. One, this is just dumb. How are these elves just walking it off? And two, Galadriel's freaking amazing. The rest of them are complete putzes. And then they rebel against her because she's determined and awesome. And they throw a mutiny. Say, no, we're done with this. You're crazy. You're on a witch hunt. And she actually is. But okay.
Yeah. Kind of.
It's so stupid. Lord. It's well, I mean, let me talk about the Witch King here right now.
Yeah.
So you're saying, I had a lot of these similar thoughts, right? It's like, a strong female lead, right? That's like,
which isn't a problem, but it's the way they portray it. And I'm going to contrast that in a second, but let's talk about some of the other stuff. So the plot, as far as I can understand it, they're all rebel against her and say, no, we got to go talk to the king because he sanctioned this mission. Because she's trying to hunt Sauron, who's this evil wizard who brought the world to its knees so that elves sailed out of their heaven, the not dying lands or whatever, and come and save everybody. But Sauron gets away. And so she's trying to hunt the guy down. Okay, that's good. But the king, King Patriarchy, because I don't know his name, because he's so stupid. He's such a pathetic character. Like in the other Lord of the Rings movies, all the elves, especially the Elven Kings, are even the bad one, Legolas's father. He's kind of a prick, but he's majestic and noble and strong. And this dude, King Patriarchy, he looks like my accountant. Okay, he's kind of fat, and there's nothing good about him. And then he just goes, nope, I don't want you hunting Sauron. What? Why wouldn't you want, if she wants to go hunt this evil wizard, why wouldn't you want her to do that? There's no explanation for why he would be stupid. So now Galadriel is the only likable character so far. She's strong, and she's the best fighter, and she's likable, and she's pretty. Everybody else is kind of a putz. Okay. And this is so stupid to me. So now let's go back to the original trilogy. Okay. I am a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. If you look up on my bookshelf, you can see right there, the Lord of the Rings in English. And then right there, El Señor de los Anillos. Apart from the Book of Mormon and the Bible, these are the only books I've read in English and Spanish. I love Lord of the Rings. Wow. I'm a huge fan. I've played the video games. So when Celebrimbor shows up, he actually comes, if you've played the Shadows of Mordor games, you know who Celebrimbor is. I know who he is. I played as him in the game. I'm a huge fan. So going back to the original three, Éowyn is one of my favorite characters. Okay, she's just like a normal chick, and she wants to protect the kingdom. So she pretends to be one of the soldiers because she's a girl and she's not supposed to be riding with the riders of Rohan. She puts on some armor and she rides off to the battle. And she's awesome, okay? And the Witch King of Angmar comes flying down. He's the baddest dude in the movie, apart from Sauron, who you never really see. He comes down and he's riding this dragon, and he knocks over the King of Rohan, and his dragon's about to eat him. All the soldiers run away because this dude's terrifying, except for Éowyn, because she's freaking awesome. And Mary, okay? So Mary's with her, and Mary's awesome too. And she single-handedly kills the Witch King's dragon.
Well, yes, but the Hobbit saves her life, and then she kills the Witch King.
Yes, okay, I'll get to that. But she single-handedly kills this monstrous dragon that's about to eat the king, cuts its head off. That's awesome. And then the Witch King pulls out this huge flail, which is bigger than she is. And it's you can tell how intimidated she is. The actress does a fantastic job just showing the sheer terror, but she faces down her terror and fights the Witch King, and he breaks her arm. She blocks one of his blows, and she breaks her arm.
The shield and crushes her arm. Yeah,
it's terrible. And then Mary stabs her with a barrel blade, which
stabs the Witch King.
Yeah, stabs the Witch King as he's about to kill her, which breaks the enchantment. Because right before that, he says, "You fool! No man can kill me." So Mary stabs him, weakens him. She stands up she only has one good arm. And she goes, "I'm no man." She pulls off her helmet. It's a really great scene. She says, "I'm no man," and stabs him in the freaking face. Kills the Witch King of Ingmar. It's such a good scene. And no, Peter Jackson didn't have to denigrate any men, didn't have to denigrate anybody else. to show that she's a freaking awesome character, that she's, she's a bad A woman, but not in the Rings of Power. To show that Galadriel's a bad A woman, you have to denigrate everybody else, which is such bad storytelling.
Here is Elon Musk's tweet, which is so this got a few articles I read. So he says Tolkien is turning in his grave. Almost every male character so far is a coward, a jerk, or both. Only Galadriel is brave, smart, and nice.
There you go.
And it's, I guess, I mean, because I agree. I'm okay with a strong female lead, although it's being done to death right now in Hollywood, right? But it's when you do it like the guys are idiots and only she knows the best. It's like, okay, it's like it becomes almost agenda ridden.
Well, it pulls you out of the movie. You just go, really? Because look at the original trilogy. Eowyn was a fantastic female character. Arwen, the elf that falls in love with Aragorn, it's an incredible love story. Super tragic. She is a great character. She's very feminine, but at the same time, she totally kicks butt. She has this awesome horse riding scene. That's one of the best scenes in cinema. Galadriel in those movies, great character. You can make really great female characters without ruining all the things. Sorry, you really can.
All right, you got agreement for me, Josh. Good job.
I don't get to respond. It's just
Ryan, what do you think?
So first, I do think Neil Gaiman's response to Elon Musk was top notch, worth responding. Right. So here's his response to Elon Musk. Elon Musk doesn't come to me for advice on how to fail to buy Twitter, and I don't go to him for film, TV, or literature criticism. I think that's fair. Elon Musk is not a TV.
What?
Absolutely.
Who's Neil Gaiman?
He's a very famous author. He's a
very
good
famous author.
I like a lot of his books.
And a lot of his stuff has been converted into movies. And
what
TVs.
a dumb thing to say. You're not writing. I don't write books for other No, I don't write books for other writers.
What makes
Who did Tolkien write the books for?
What makes Elon Musk a legitimate critic?
Well, so now you have to be
right.
Siskel and Ebert to criticize a movie. What are we doing then?
I'm just saying.
Apparently, I'm not a legitimate critic, even though I am an author.
Why do we care what Elon Musk has to say about this movie?
Because he's Elon Musk.
And
why do you care what I have to say?
Because
why do you care what I have to say?
Brother, and we actually do care about this stuff. Why do we care about Elon Musk? Right. So I just had to put that in. Second point.
That's stupid. I'm sorry. I like Neil Gaiman. That's stupid.
Well,
that's really stupid.
I would say you're buying a business to try to make money, right? You're making a show to please people. And so like everybody gets a voice in whether it was pleasing or not. And granted, you vote with your dollar. And let
me say, I think
if this is a huge monetary success, then great.
I think 250 million of the billion that they spent on this was just to buy the rights to do it. Yeah. Because it's such a popular franchise and people love it. So if you're not, I mean, the Star Wars did the same thing. If you're not going to cater to the people that made this a popular franchise,
this will be
what the freak are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll get to it.
Like this. That'll be my third point.
Okay. All right.
To continue on with Galadriel and what's going on here. So do keep in mind, for those who haven't seen this, right? Hopefully you have. Galadriel's brother is badass. Okay. So it's not like there are no strong men in this.
And gets killed right off the bat.
Yeah. Who's he fighting?
So I don't know. I don't remember how he died.
Sauron kills him.
Like one-on-one?
Huh?
Like one-on-one? I thought he got carried off by some orcs or something. No. He was like screaming and the orcs like pushed him away.
Yeah.
No. Sauron kills him and then gives his mark, right? So that's actually how he dies, is he's killed by Sauron. Sauron catches him trying to find him. Then in episode 2, Galadriel nearly dies and is saved by a guy with a penis, right? A man saves her, right? So
on the raft?
Yes.
He doesn't. Oh, when she falls in. Oh, okay.
She gets hit by lightning and is drowning.
Yeah, that was so stupid.
And the guy jumps in and saves her life.
Why would she tie herself to the little piece of wood on this? The only thing that's going to sink on the raft.
But it doesn't matter, Josh,
right? It doesn't matter why. She gets saved by a man.
Guy. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the idea that like she is, unbelievably amazing, and like she can kill everybody, and she's impenetrable and like unbelievable. She's vulnerable, right? I mean, immediately she's vulnerable. She jumps off the ship because she decides not to go to Valinor and almost dies.
And swims across an entire ocean.
No, swims and then gets picked up on a crazy raft and then gets picked up by the people who live on Numenor, right? So like complicated story, but by the time she gets to Numenor, she doesn't even have her knife. The guy gives her her knife back, right? So she's basically just being saved repeatedly for the next 2 episodes. So if you're just focused on the one scene where she is really good, and then I do also have to mention, right, if you've seen or read the Lord of the Rings, wouldn't Legolas do the exact same thing to a troll like that? No one would bat an eye if Legolas, because Legolas does this with an elephant in the final episode, right?
It still only counts as one. Sure.
Yes, right?
But he's not denigrating anybody to do it.
Massive elephant.
Yeah, he's totally OP.
Sure.
Way OP.
Yeah.
So why does it matter when it's Galadriel who does it, but everybody's like,
I already explained that. Because
Legolas is awesome. Galadriel,
you don't have to denigrate anybody in the first movies. You just see that they're really cool. And this one, they're denigrating everybody else to show how they're cool, which is just bad storytelling. It really is.
I don't see how they're denigrating anybody, to be honest.
Right. Well, all right.
Shocker.
I'm gonna. So you do not agree?
Well, Josh didn't even ask me, so apparently it's moot.
I just wanted to know your
just
opinion.
Assume that. I mean, if I could actually hear the question, I didn't fully hear the question, but it seemed like it was just a bomb.
The woke scold social justice warriors ruin all the things.
I don't even know what that second. The woke.
Did they
scold?
You've never heard that term?
Well, I know
Woke scolds.
scold, like woke scolds.
Just put them together. It's pretty obvious what it means. The
So
people that are woke, they
people for not being woke enough.
yeah. They scold everybody if you're not woke enough.
All right, I'm moving on.
You've been scolded by the woke scolds for not being woke enough.
I have. Yes.
Okay.
All right, Josh. Ryan's second question here. Can we agree that Tolkien's universe was racialized?
And I'm going to explain that term. So we're going to be really careful here. And this is, again, we're going back to this format, right? So let me just be clear and I'm going to explain stuff. I think it's important for us to discuss the possibility that Tolkien himself was a product of his time, born in 1892, died in 1973 before any of us were born, and that he suggested that the characters in his novels followed something of a racial hierarchy. Keep in mind, I don't think I'm as big of a fan as Josh is, but I'm a fan of Tolkien. I've read all of his books, right? So I wouldn't consider myself a mega or uber fan. I don't have all of it memorized. Admittedly, I, over the last 2 days, probably spent like 6 hours reading different things about this on various fan forums because I'm just so like fascinated by the background. Yeah. I first read those primary books, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, when I was in 5th grade. I'm rereading them now thanks to the Rings of Power, right? So I just finished the previous series that I was reading. I'm moving on. I'm not going to suggest that Tolkien was a blatant or open racist. I don't think he was. I'm suggesting that, like most people who lived when he did, he probably had some racialized views, and that may have colored his writing. And note the language I'm using. I'm saying racialized. Racialized just means that race is present and matters. Okay? So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's a racist. I'm saying race is present in his writing. Okay.
It sounds like what you're saying is that he was a racist.
No, I'm saying race was present in his writing. And if you listen, this is what I'm going to say, right? So I'm trying to walk a very fine line here by not saying Tolkien is a racist, but rather suggesting that race colored his worldview. His racialized views were not blatant, but I think they were there and they were subtle. Most of the elves, not all of them, are depicted as very fair, which has always come across as very white. Orcs are not typically characterized that way. And he does describe a hierarchy of humans. That's his language, okay? The Easterlings, or swarthy men, do we know what swarthy means? Swarthy means dark-skinned, okay? The swarthy men sided with Morgoth, and the black men, or Haradrim, fought with Sauron. So Morgoth was actually Sauron's boss. He was the first evil guy.
So all the dark people or the dark men, dark-skinned men are with the bad, team bad.
Almost exclusively, not exclusively. While the white men tended to either not side with evil or fought with the elves on the side of good. quick aside here, I'm skipping here the fact that Tolkien refers only to the races of men in his writing, not of humans or humankind, which would be more inclusive of women who are marginalized with this language. But I'm going to leave that aside. Okay, so that's an aside.
All right. Wasn't
The reality is
Sauron the White? Wasn't he the baddie?
Yes, he was Sauron, but then I mean, white is almost like a ranking, right? It's almost like a class.
Oh, well, when it's convenient, yeah.
Well, Tolkien's alignment of black or dark-skinned men with evil is not universal. The Druidain were darker skinned. This is his description, with flat noses, and were dwarf-like in stature, but were allies of the elves and helped the Rohirrim before the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. And again, this is getting really deep into the weeds here. So those who don't know this, right? And I have to give credit to the one wiki to rule them all, because I was looking up a lot of these details and it was great. I like I said, I got sucked into it. It's not even the books, right? It's the wikis explaining the books. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love this. So I think it could be said that Tolkien created a world that included race, because he did. Yeah. He included race. And that generally speaking, darker skinned individuals sided with evil and lighter skinned individuals sided with good, but not universally. So can we agree that Tolkien's universe was racialized, that race existed in this universe?
You're saying he's racist?
Sure. No,
I don't understand.
I'm saying he wrote race into the universe.
Sure.
And it was kind of racist, is really what you're saying.
And the way that it depicts it is that darker skinned individuals tend to be evil, lighter skinned individuals tend not to be evil.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Like, can we just agree on this? That this is what the books say.
When was he born?
Late 1800s, 1890.
Okay, so a guy that lived in the 1800s when race was a thing was a little racist. Race colored his worldview. Mm-hmm. Shocker!
Is that agreement?
It's such a silly, dumb thing, and you walk around it so carefully.
Josh, you know why? Well, you know why? Because if I came out on this podcast and just like, Josh, you're a racist, Tom, you're a racist, the podcast's over. You guys are going to lose your minds. And I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to be. You did it last
week. You want me to tell you all the feedback I got from our podcast last week?
We'll get there at the end. Okay.
Let me read this article. So I was reading up a few, because there have been a lot of articles that have been blasting people, because people that have criticized it. Right here, theconversation.com is a website.
I'm familiar. I've actually published my work on The Conversation a couple of times.
The Rings of Power is suffering a racist backlash for casting actors of color, but Tolkien's work has always attracted white supremacists.
I didn't go that far.
Well,
please recognize I did not go that far.
No, you didn't. Okay? But it does infer that they were attracted to it because Tolkien was a racist. And I
didn't say he was a racist. I said he was racialized in how he wrote about it.
I don't know how. I don't even know what that means. But like,
you know what it means, right?
Just softballing.
I'm actually with Josh on this. That he was probably, there was probably something there for sure, like that in his writings.
Okay, but I need to hear Josh actually say that he agrees with this, because he keeps saying this is a dumb point. It's irrelevant. Josh, is it true or not?
Okay. No, let's be very clear on exactly what you're asking. Okay. Are you saying Tolkien is a racist and that's why this exists? Or are you saying
I didn't say that?
Okay, let me specify something here. When you're creating a fantasy world, and Tolkien is amazing. He created this whole genre. Okay?
I agree.
When you're creating a historical fantasy world and you put race in it, and even if there is like class division, there's a book up here on my shelf. It's based on like it has like an Indian kind of culture to it.
Indian or
no, it's not a subcontinent Indian, but it's not based in India. It just kind of has Indian historical lineage, and it's in a fantasy made up world. Right. And he put like the class system that India had, the caste system. That's what I was looking for. So he has the caste system in it. Okay. He's not a racist guy. I actually know the author. He's a very good author. People accuse him of being a racist, but he put that in there because, that's an important part of the history of India. It happened. People were racist. There's still some racism there, right? Because of their weird caste system and skin color and how that played into it. Are you going to call the author racist for putting that in the fantasy world that he built? So that's where there's some confusion on your question. Are you just saying Tolkien was racist, or was there some race issues? And there's race distinctions in Middle Earth. I'll agree to that. Yeah, there are.
There
I'm
are
actually going to
race
talk about
distinction
one.
in Middle Earth. Okay, and can we just push it one step further and
No.
say?
Because what you're trying to do is
generally the darker skinned individuals are on the side of evil.
No, okay, sure, whatever. Okay, it doesn't really matter.
Yes
because
or no?
What you're getting at here is the producers were right in correcting racist Tolkien by putting black people
I'm not even
everywhere.
bringing that up. I'm literally not even going to bring
But
that up.
that's the inference, and it's so
It is.
stupid.
I'm not even bringing that up. I'm just trying to.
That doesn't excuse what you're doing. Saying I'm not going to say it. That's what I'm doing, but I'm not going to say it. It's so stupid.
Wow.
Okay, so he wrote a make-believe fantasy world, and there are some racial distinction in it. Okay,
Distinctions that make it into a hierarchy.
But not completely, because there are other.
Make
Okay,
it into a
so
hierarchy. That's like the definition of racism, right?
Yeah,
Of making it
it's
into
so
a hierarchy.
stupid what you're saying.
Well,
You did this not. We
uh,
might have to stop the podcast. This is so stupid.
do you think? Okay, I'm gonna move. I'm just gonna move on. I think you have some agreement there, Ryan. But
I hope so, because at this point I haven't moved into opinion at all. This is just like fact. But that's okay. We're moving past this.
Well, just get to my question because it deals with this
Ryan,
completely.
would you agree that murdering everyone with dark skin of any species would be a horrible thing to do?
Yes. Can you give me some context?
Yeah,
Sure.
you got.
Okay, so when I should explain this, I did a watch party with Ryan and I's nephews, Jake and Corbin, and our friend Hunter, because we were all really excited about Lord of the Rings. Like, we were just going to watch it and be like, this is so cool. So we started it, and almost immediately it turned into an MSTK3 party, Mystery Science Theater 3000, where we just started making fun of it because it was some of this stuff so silly.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
No,
the Rings of Power.
The Rings of Power.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
This
got it.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of did with my brothers as well.
Same
we watched
thing.
it all together, and I think it's just poorly written, and I was bored. I was bored. It was like,
And I'll get to that in my third point. Okay.
Anyway,
So we start watching it, and they got to the Harfoots, okay, the hobbits, and they several of them were black, like half of them were black. I didn't even notice, okay, because in the lore, the Tolkien actually had several different species of hobbit, and he said in the lore the Harfoots were darker skinned. I didn't even notice. Oh, okay, cool. There's like we didn't even talk about it. Didn't even register. And then we got to the black humans, and I went, was there any? I don't remember any black humans at all in the movies. Then we got to the black elves, and I went, oh, that's what we're doing. Now it's so jarring that's what they're doing. It's pulled me out of the story. Bad story crafting. Then we got to the black dwarf lady. Okay, the king that she's married to, he's a direct ancestor, either a father or grandfather of dwarves we've already seen in the other movies who are white. What? Okay, now the continuity is completely ruined. When it's just the Harfoots, when it's just the hobbits, no continuity lost. That's fine. There's no problem. Then we get to all the other tons of black people. We've ruined the continuity from the other movies, and the movies are fantastic. Everybody agrees that the original three are fantastic. And now we've ruined continuity. Now it's so jarring what they're obviously doing, the woke agenda. It's pulled me right out of the show. Now I'm just like, really? Now I'm going to share. So I started asking my nephews, like, where did all the black elves go? Because there aren't any. When we see Legolas, where did all the black dwarfs go? So
you're saying visually from a continuity from the movies.
Yeah, because the original ones, there wasn't any black people. So let me, Ryan, will you
understand this point? But okay.
Okay, pull up this meme. It's freaking hilarious. Jake found this for me right after we watched it, and I couldn't stop laughing. Maybe show that if you can.
Okay. Pulling it up. And I'll add this in post. Okay, Tom, I'm going to share my screen because there's no audio here, right? So
No, it's just a meme.
yeah. So it says in the second age, we had black elves.
This is Elrond.
That's Elrond. And then that's Bilbo. He says, what happened to them? And then Elrond has a creepy looking greenish
like sinister smile.
That's
Sinister laugh.
is the implication he ate them?
It's the Agent Anderson face from The Matrix, right?
Oh,
Hugo Weaving, so freaking. Yeah. He's such a great actor. What happened to all the black elves and dwarves? Who killed them? What happened? Where was the black genocide? What happened? That's immediately where my mind went when I saw this. Because guess what? In the other movies and all the other movies, no black elves, no black dwarves. Who killed them? So now I'm completely sucked out of the show, asking my nephews like, what happened to everybody? This is horrible. That's all I could think about. All of the black people got killed. Were there a racist Ku Klux Klan of Uruk-hai that just went around just killing the black elves? Like, that's where my mind went. As somebody who has crafted fantasy worlds for the books that I've written, when you break the continuity, it totally ruins the story. It's bad story crafting. So apparently there was like it actually made me want to go write some Lord of the Rings fanfic. Some fan fiction to
I kind of want to too, actually, but
like, who killed all the black people? Like, who are these Ku Klux Klan douchebags? Who's the racist Sauron Hitler that killed all the black people? Like, what happened?
Okay, I see. So your question, right, Ryan? Should they have murdered all those black people?
Because they clearly did. Because they don't show any in the Third Age movies.
I mean, I can't believe that we're actually having this conversation, but that's fine. Like we're having the conversation. We're trying here. Okay. Do you recognize like the way that you flip the causality? And if this is where your mind went, and that's your whole point, is like this is just where Josh's one person's mind went this way, right? If that's your point, then okay, that's your point. I'm not going to disagree with where your mind went.
Except that this is clearly an issue because a lot of people, so many people have brought this up that Amazon stopped comments.
Well,
because of this. It's not that we don't like black people, and I'll get to that with my third.
Okay, can I finish my point? Like, okay, can I just respond for a second?
Sure. So, tell me I'm racist again.
Honestly, no,
stop it.
Immediately, that's where you go, Josh. Every time I open my mouth, it's just like, you are calling me a racist. Peter Jackson created the sequel to the movie, to the show that we're now watching, right? Mm-hmm. Starting over 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's the sequel.
Yes.
And now we're watching the prequel, and there's no necessity to adhere to that as though that is canon, right? You don't have to adhere to Peter Jackson.
You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
Totally.
Right? Now, again, if this is where Josh's mind went, I can't disagree with where Josh's mind went, but the producers of the Rings of Power can literally do whatever they want.
Sure.
Okay. And there's no reason why they can't. So what's wrong with doing whatever they want? They can do that. That's perfectly fine.
Ryan, you agree that there was an intentional effort by the producers to make sure that there was representation in all the classes.
Absolutely. No question.
And maybe just as a point to modernize it or to make it reflect what our current demographic is.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what they did.
Just for the case of making it look like our current demographic.
I could be wrong about this. I think I read that Kate Blanchett makes a return in the third episode as Galadriel, older Galadriel. Am I right?
I've seen it. I don't recall her being in it.
I think somebody said that she's in it. I read that somewhere a day or two ago. That could be wrong. I might be wrong. But if Kate Blanchett shows back up as Galadriel, what is that a callback to? The original three movies, right?
Yeah,
where she plays Galadriel. Maybe that's not right.
I haven't seen her, but
I'm
looking.
So if they're doing their own thing, fine. But where did they say that there's not going to be any continuity with Peter Jackson's incredible movies that everybody loved. Again, why did they buy the rights to the franchise?
No, they didn't buy
build
the rights from Peter Jackson. They bought them
from the Tolkien estate.
family. Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. They can do whatever they want with it.
I'm not disagreeing with
absolutely
that.
can.
I'm
Yeah,
just
they
saying
can.
it was stupid because there's no continuity
Why?
with the 3 movies that are the foundation for what most people understand to be Lord of the Rings. Do you think most people have read the books? No. Okay, my kids have watched Lord of the Rings. They haven't read the books, so what they know of Lord of the Rings is Peter Jackson's movies. Okay,
That's fine.
so they've broken continuity with that. So sure,
But
you can
they
say
can't.
that's where. Of course they can, but
you're
the
right.
fans don't like it.
Some fans. Let's get to my third point.
Oh,
All right.
let me address this, okay? Because this has a direct correlation with the race issue. The fan Rotten Tomato score for Lord of the Rings is 39%. Most people don't like it for whatever reason. And everybody, all the woke skulled social justice warriors, that's hard to say, they're saying it's because all these people are racist. They're so racist. Okay, we have a direct comparison where we can compare a like for like example. Game of Thrones just came out with a prequel sequel, right? The House of the Dragon. Very similar setting. It's a low fantasy setting, set in a very similar universe. It had a very, very popular original run, and now they're doing a prequel to it. And they were released almost the same time. And it's featuring very prominent black characters as the main characters. I haven't seen it, but that's what I read about it. So like some of the very main characters in this new Game of Thrones, black. Rotten Tomato score 85%. People really like it. What's the difference
here on the Rotten Tomato score? So the average tomato meter for the Lord of the Rings of Power is 84%. The average audience score is 39%. So the critics like it.
Yeah, critics are always wrong about these movies. Always.
But let's just be honest about the scores here, right? Critics like it.
Who cares about the critic scores? Nobody ever goes by the critic scores because the critics on Rotten Tomatoes are all woke.
Lots of fans.
39%. Okay, versus 85%.
A whole bunch of people came out of the works. I haven't gone to IMDb to rate it or Rotten Tomatoes to rate it.
We're all racist.
All right. I'm gonna move on here.
Thank you.
I don't know if we got agreement on that, Ryan.
I don't even know whose question
we were on Josh's question, and
it was on the continuity.
Well, he didn't call it continuity. He's like, is it a bad thing to kill all the black people?
I was trying to get
and Ryan, you're basically saying
agreement.
Ryan, you're basically saying you don't care and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying they shouldn't have broken continuity because it pulls people out of the story. Bad storytelling.
Ryan, okay. Josh, we're gonna go to Ryan's third question. Josh, can we agree that there are many diehard fans of Tolkien who have no problem whatsoever with this interpretation of Tolkien's work and actually appreciate the diversity?
Okay, so I watched the first 3 episodes with my wife and son, and they don't love me bringing them into the podcast, but that's fine. Had I not explained that we were watching these in preparation for this podcast, they both said they never would have thought anything was amiss in the series. That there were strong females and black elves and dwarves would not even have registered in their minds. They like the show. To Josh's possibly next point, the pacing is admittedly a little slow. Okay, so if we want to just critique the show, I'm fine with that critique. I think it is a little bit slow, but they're building backstory for eventually getting to other stuff. So that's fine. They like the show, and I think it would be an accurate description of their perspective to say that there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's perfectly fine. I think their argument would boil down to, is this a good story with good writing and good acting? Why would it matter if the characters are male, female, trans, black, white, etc.? So my question here, can we agree that there are actually many diehard fans of Tolkien who are perfectly fine with this interpretation?
I have no idea. No idea.
There are.
I can agree. There's probably some. I don't know.
I'm gonna guess 30. I'm gonna guess 39%.
There you go. That's more than me.
I don't think that's even accurate because I wouldn't say most of those 39% are diehard fans. They're probably fans. Probably the new series. Well, but I don't think they're diehard fans because I think most diehard fans don't like what's happening because it's like this dumb woke thing.
I don't think you can establish that. You don't know.
That's exactly what I think.
You just
tried
to establish
saying. Ryan's saying is Debbie, his wife, who doesn't have any history with the franchise, is a fan apparently,
Yep.
But not a diehard fan.
Well, no, she hasn't read the books.
She hasn't read the book, right?
She hasn't read the books. But we've watched all of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit multiple times in this house. And she did not bat an eye about the continuity issues that you
are. You going to continue? Is she going to continue watching them?
Yeah. She actually what was it? We finished the second one and it was late because my son's obviously in school and she wanted to keep watching, but I was like, torn his school, right? She's like, oh, but it's such a good series. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far. The
good.
Issue I would have is the pacing is a bit slow. And I see that as them building backstory, but so far I think it's been quite an entertaining series. And I look forward to watching the rest. I have no problem with it.
That's great. All right. So, Josh, you agree?
I feel change the question. And
okay, I'll just change it.
There are many fans.
There are some fans.
39% of people that watch it like it. Yes, agree.
All right.
I'm going to guess it's way more than that, but that's fine.
Well, as a percentage, it's hard to tell, right? You could really only go by the ratings.
Yep.
But
yes, but I mean, just to be fair, right? The people who rate things either really love it or they really hate it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Very few people are like, yeah, this is fine. And they're like, now I'm going to go write tons of reviews.
Most people don't put a 3-star review of something.
Like nobody does.
1 star or 5
stars. I hated it or I really loved it. So we have.
But there's a reason that we're talking about it. It's because there's a big enough outcry about how many people really thought this was stupid what they did. That's why we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ryan, last question for you. Okay, Ryan, what is Gladriel doing with that rope? I mean, seriously, what is she doing? And why is she doing it for several minutes without actually doing anything? What is going on?
Which rope? On the boat?
Yes. So there's this scene. I thought about just showing it, but then we might get demonetized. She's on the rope, or she's on the raft, and there's like this stick sticking up, and there's a rope tied to that with a loop in it, and she has another rope tied through that, and she's talking to the dude. I don't even know who he is, and she's like just fiddling with the rope. She's like pulling it, she's tugging on it, and then she like pretends to tie it but doesn't do anything. This goes on for like 4 minutes while she's talking to the guy. She does nothing with this rope for 4 minutes, and like I have no idea what the conversation was, because immediately when the scene started and I saw how the rope was tied to the stick, I was like, what's the point of that? Like, is it an anchor? If it is, why is it tied to, like, as somebody that spent time on boats, there's no reason to be doing what she's doing. And she does it for 4 minutes. And I understand like a director's conundrum with, there's 2 people on a raft, there's not much to do, and you don't want them just sitting there, right? She's just screwing around with a rope for 4 minutes. It's so stupid. Okay. So right before that, when that water dragon worm thing, whatever, comes, they're all on a raft, and it comes out of nowhere, and she dives off the raft, and it smashes the raft. And as she's swimming away, there's this scene where the camera's right on her, and you can see the dragon eating the people behind her.
Yeah,
I gasped because that was one of the most beautiful cinematographic scenes I've ever seen. It was incredibly well done, just beautiful. And then it eats everybody on the raft, and she's swimming away, and then the dude picks her up. Why didn't it eat them? Like, it just swims away. So they're so busy.
It was full.
Apparently it was full. It was huge, and it ate 3 people on the other raft, but it just let them get away. Okay, and she's the whole rope thing. At the end of the second episode, the Dwarven King is talking to Elrond, and they walk up to this table, and there's a chest on the table, and there's 2 dwarves just standing there. And he walks up to the table, and these 2 dwarves reach over and very gently and reverently pull open the box. And Corbin goes, "That's their job. They're just the box openers." I was laughing so hard I fell out of my chair because it's so stupid. We rewound the scene, and yeah, there's just 2 dwarves just standing there, by a table, and the king walks up to the table, and it takes both of them to open this very small chest, and they open it up, and you don't see what's in it. There's just two dwarves that stand by this table all day, opening the box so the king can see what's ever in the chest.
So, Josh, do you actually have a question?
I don't think he does. I think he's just making fun of stuff in the series.
There's a point that I'm getting to here. When you spend all of when you're writing a story like this, I've written 5 books. Okay, not that any of them are any good, but I've spent time crafting a story. And there's only so many things that you can focus on. You can focus on the action scenes and maybe a love interest. You can focus on the world building. There's only so much time that you have to build up to something, right? There's only so much time you have to tell your story. So when you get so focused on things that people don't care about, the rest of the story suffers. Okay. My contention is they spent so much time worried about checking off all these intersectional woke boxes, which a lot of stories do now. The rest of the story suffers. There's just glaring holes in this story that make no sense. What is she doing with that rope for 5 minutes? Okay, and there's when you look at the details, they got the details so wrong on a lot of these scenes because they're so worried about everything else. It's baffling, and Ryan won't agree with it, but the writing's bad. The writing is just so. Do
you think the writing's good, Ryan?
It's so wooden. The characters are unlikable. It's like, what are they? Like, I couldn't name a single character besides Elrond and Galadriel because I knew them from before. I don't know who anybody else is. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know who the screaming man is that fell to the sky. I don't know what he's doing.
Gandalf.
Or Sauron.
Oh, could be Sauron.
Or Saruman. Saruman. I mean.
I think it's Gandalf.
Whatever. I don't know who anybody is, and I don't care.
Arundel's great.
Arundel, yeah.
Who's Arundel?
But he's also...
He's the Black Elf, and he's awesome.
He's also from the lore.
He was the only new character that I thought was even remotely interesting.
He's super cool.
Okay, another scene that we couldn't stop laughing about when the chick that he's into, she comes running into her house, and there's a huge pit, and everything's tore up, and it's all destroyed, and she's looking for her son, and she, what did she yell out? She yells out like, "Are you all right?" Or like just something so inane. The house is destroyed and there's a pit to hell in the house. And she just yells out something like, are you okay? Like the acting is so wooden and the dialogue is so bad. You wouldn't yell that if your child's in the house, right? It was just, there's just so many scenes like that where you go, what are you guys doing? You had $1 billion on this. And this is the dialogue?
This is the one we liked. This Arundel comes to the lady at the hut. Right. Yeah. And he's like outside and she comes out and she's like talking to him. And then the kid opens the door and he's like, "Hey, there's someone at the door." And they're like, yeah, the guy, she's talking to him at the door. And no, there's another door on the other side of the house. And you're like, oh, the other door. And you're like, and they're like,
I will admit that one was weird. I was like,
I was like, what? Yeah.
There's somebody at the door. And I was like, he is kind of at the door, right? Like,
how many doors does this house have?
Well, even that guy, it's a farmer with a cow. And he's like, yeah, my cow was like wandering. Like, how far did he go? He was like miles away. What kind of farmer lets their cows just wander over like 3 states over? Like, so what?
Can I,
the details are just... The details just don't work.
Can I summarize this then, Josh? Could this be a good question of like when you focus on wokeness or modernization, it can take away from the story?
Good way to put it. And we talked about this in a previous episode. I don't remember which one. Yeah, you ruin the story when this is your focus. It's bad storytelling when it's so woke, it pulls you out of the show.
I wouldn't even say that it. I wouldn't even say if it ruins it, but that it splits focus from.
You've mentioned in the Avengers movie when they had the woman power scene, it pulled you out of the movie.
Right.
You're no longer on. You're no longer on the edge of your seat, like into the movie. You go, oh, there's messaging.
It's contrived. Exactly.
They're preaching to me. Okay. I got that constantly in here. They're preaching to me. Oh, she's cool because she's a girl and girls rule and boys drool. Okay, I got it. They're preaching to me. That's why this is in here. And it just ruins what could be a really good story. Because again, the cinematography is fantastic. The best I've ever seen. The backgrounds, like when they're in the Elvish woods, What?
It's really nice. I think it looks
Oh,
great.
it's fantastic. The backgrounds, when they walked into the Dwarvish city for the first time, I gasped again. I went, holy crap, that looks so good. That's great. The Elven Forest looks great. Boy, the dialogue sucks. The acting's not good. And there's just too much messaging there.
Do you think? Do you agree, Ryan, that wokeness takes that it kind of splits focus of the story when you're trying to promote like an agenda, I guess?
Well, I mean, if you were trying to promote an agenda, I think they're trying to tell a story, right? And I think.
But would you agree that they're trying to do other things as well?
No, I think what they did is they.
That's just a coincidence.
No, I think in the casting, they were like, hey, let's make this a diverse cast, right? Okay, done. We got a diverse cast. Now move on. Let's tell a story and let's tell a story. So I don't think in every episode, they're like, where's our woke quotient, right? What's the woke quotient of this episode? Did we reach our woke quotient? I don't think any of the producers, any of the directors, anybody else is trying to do that.
You don't think there was any intention to make the guys look kind of like buffoons and that Galadriel's the only one that knows anything?
But, okay. That's one scene in the very first episode, right? And everybody makes a big deal out of that one scene. No, I don't think that was actually even a big deal at all. But if we continue the series, I think he's perfectly fine. I have had no issues with that king. If you recall, I'm trying to think, is it Legolas's dad in Peter Jackson's series? The one who, when he takes off his mask, right, like he kind of reveals his face and it's like this massively burned face or whatever. That didn't want to get involved either. He totally is like, I'm not going to help dwarves, right? He was totally standoffish, and this is how a lot of the the elf kings are. They're like, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to get involved, right?
Well, that was late.
Does the exact same thing. It's like, we're not getting involved, right? We're just not going to do this. How is that any different from what happened with Legolas's dad?
I thought that was later.
Do you really want to go into that?
Yeah, I thought originally, because the elves were involved in the first phase or whatever, the first age. Yeah, and they fought with the men against Sauron and all that stuff. But then later,
against Morgoth, Sauron's boss,
Morgoth. Yeah, but then later they don't, because they're like, no, we're getting less and less involved. I thought that was sort of there's actually like a progression of them.
Yeah, they keep getting involved. It's always about the elves. I mean, everybody loves the elves.
Well, but I thought in the Lord of the Rings, it's the men that have to do it, and the elves aren't.
So at the end of the Third Age, which is where the Lord of the Rings movies end, right? The elves do kind of come to the aid of the men, right? But they're kind of keep pushing, like, men, you have to take over.
Yeah.
At the end of that one, all the elves leave for Valinor.
Right. But that's what I kind of thought. They were kind of like, we're going to help a little bit, but this is sort of your fight.
So they start out like they're doing it all. And then you're right, it transitions out. But by the end of the Third Age, they're done. Like, we're done. We're all going to Valinor. We're going to heaven, right? We're going to Valinor. Now it's the Age of Men. It's yours. But they helped the whole time. But it's a complicated, long history. I mean, I was getting a lot of this when I was reading like these wikis of different elf kings are like, yes, we'll engage. Others are like, no, we're not. Sometimes they're evil. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes Morgoth, who's Melkor, is the same guy. He's Sauron's boss, basically. He comes in and deceives some of the elf kings, right? He's a very wily, deceptive person who actually takes on the persona of men sometimes, takes on the persona of elves sometimes. So it's a really complicated story. Sometimes the elf kings are good. Sometimes they're bad. Sometimes they do stuff. Sometimes they don't.
All right. So there wasn't.
Josh, you wanted to respond here to something?
You don't think there's that much
wokeness? Any point?
I don't think they're trying to make wokeness the message. I think they just cast a diverse cast, right? They're just like, hey, let's cast a diverse cast because this is a reflection of modern society in which we live. And now let's tell a story. Okay. Are all the actors the very best actors I've ever seen? No. I think there are some stronger actors. I think there's some weaker actors, but they're trying to tell a story.
Do you like the dialogue?
The writing?
I would say the dialogue is B plus, A minus. It's not the best writing I've ever seen, but it's not the worst I've ever seen.
Is so generous.
But a B plus, I think, is pretty fair for what's going on, because there have actually been a couple of lines where all three of us were like, actually, that was a pretty good line, right? Somebody's at the door. all three of us were like, totally fair, right? That's a totally fair point, because I was like, what is going on? I even caught that one.
Right.
So there are
There's a
some
man at the door. Like, yeah, I'm talking
it's
to him.
right there. Totally fair. I'll grant some of those, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think it's, like I said, a woke quotient every episode. And they're like, got to meet our woke quotient. I don't think they're trying to do that. I think they just cast people diversely, and now they're telling a story. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you don't agree. You do not agree. All right. That was interesting. Let's do some closing comments, thoughts, conclusions, statements. Josh, you want to take a whack?
I really should come up with closing statements before this point in the podcast. I forget about it every podcast.
Well, before you do, since we talked about this right before we started, right? Do we want to start by trying to summarize the other person's points, just to make sure like we did that?
Me.
Either one, right? Like either I do it for Josh does it for me, or you summarize everybody's. Because we just kind of talked about like this is the aim, right? Is to make sure that we're understanding the other person's perspective.
Well, let me, because I was actually thinking about it through this podcast, right? Because the question is the Rings of Power too woke? But that whole, even just saying that is very subjective of like, what does that even mean? What is too woke? And can you go too woke? Because what Ryan's saying is they can do whatever they want. They bought the rights. They can tell any story that they want to. Now, one interpretation could be going too woke is that the story doesn't do well monetarily, right? That could be one interpretation. The other one could be ratings. Everyone hates it, right? Or a lot of people do not like it, right? The majority do not like it. And so isn't that their decision to make, right? And if they spent almost $1 billion and it doesn't do well, then maybe then I guess that would be a referendum on doing that sort of style, right? I don't know, right? But it's if they did have some agenda, and it sounds like Ryan, you're only saying it seems like you're saying the only agenda it seems like was in the casting of the diversity of the casting. You don't think there was really anything else going on there. I think Josh and I both disagree, but I think there was some more. There were some trying to do some other things, but like again, that's their prerogative. And I think that's so. I guess like if I made a statement, it'd be something I don't even know. It would be like, Hollywood can do whatever they want, and there are probably pros and cons. And if going too liberal, I guess, is too costly, then the pendulum will have to swing back. I don't even know if I made a statement there, but I'm just like, but
I think we get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like they're at liberty to do it, and if it hurts them by going too far, then they'll hopefully have learned a lesson, and then they can make adjustments next time. But ultimately, they're free to do it.
Okay, do you want me to restate Ryan's points?
No, just make your closing argument.
No. Okay. The fact that we're even talking about this really is a referendum that they went too woke. Okay. When you look at the box office scores for this past summer, the best movie I think was Top Gun Maverick, and everybody agreed there's no woke messaging. There was like a callback to the 80s and my childhood, and a great movie. And they just told a fun story. And, there were some nostalgia elements, and people just love good stories. I just want a good story. And a lot of people on the right are just really sick of being preached to. We talked about that in that other episode. Can we just tell a good story without checking off all these intersectional boxes? Is that really too much to ask? And I'll admit, there's not a ton, like Ryan said, there's no LGBTQ plus minus whatever in this yet. They might throw it in. Who knows? Who cares? It's not super overt. I'll give Ryan that, but it's present enough that it jarred me out of the story. It jarred everybody I've talked to out of the story, which is bad storytelling. And there's a reason we're talking about this. Only 39% of people like it, and this is a very beloved franchise, which is super frustrating. They did this with Star Wars. We talked about that. That's a beloved franchise that I grew up watching and love. And then they gotta do this agenda-driven messaging, and it just ruins. This is why I asked my silly first question. Do the social justice warriors ruin all the things? They're sure trying to. They're trying to put all of their preaching into all of these things that we loved, and they just make them not fun anymore. This is just supposed to be fun. Lord of the Rings is fun. I love playing the video games because there's not like biracial orcs like, oh, don't kill that one. Like you just go murder 1,000 orcs in the video game. That's fun. Sorry, it's fun. Why do you have to preach to me when I'm trying to have fun? Right? This would be analogous to me, like Ryan's favorite show. All of a sudden, I'm going to put Book of Mormon quotes in there to preach at him, just to get him. Just stop it. Just stop it. I just want to have fun. I just want to watch a fun show. Kill some orcs, chop their heads off, kill the ice troll without it being stupid. You know, if he slams an elf up against the wall, maybe that guy should be dead. Okay.
Right.
Okay, but that's
So
not
stupid.
book messaging.
No, it's not.
That's
No,
not
it-
book messaging at all.
I
That's
never
just
said
bad
it was.
writing.
Bad writing.
No.
Yes.
You can only focus on so much. So if you're going to have even 30% of your attention is on the woke messaging, where it could have been on fixing some of these details or plot points, that's where it should have been. It shouldn't have been 30% on the woke messaging because it detracts from the story. And I'm not even disagreeing with the messaging. Okay, I gave a great example of how I think empowering women in fiction is awesome. Erwin's one of my favorite characters. There's ways to do it, and there's ways not to do it. You're just going to ruin the movies if you do it the dumb way.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Want to hear it?
Yeah, I have to throw this in just because it's too funny. Have either of you watched the series The Expanse?
Yeah,
No.
Sci-fi series.
it's fantastic. It starts off fantastic. It kind of gets. Weird.
We're in season 3, so don't ruin anything.
Okay, I won't
We're
ruin
watching it right now.
That's
but-
right where it goes downhill.
Well, Josh just mentioned, right? Like, take Brian's best series and put Book of Mormon quotes in The Expanse.
They did.
The ship, the Nauvoo, right? There are
It's-
Mormons in The Expanse. The whole first season has a big Mormon
So
stuff.
they're kind of making fun of the Mormons, though, saying they're kind of extremists and they're going to sell to Kolob.
Anyway, since you mentioned it, and I happened to be watching that,
Fair
like
enough.
that's what we interrupted to watch this so I could do the podcast.
That was
right?
a mistake because the
So we're
Expanse
watching
is
it.
good,
I think it's pretty good. We're enjoying it, right?
but there's no overt messaging in that show. Even like the Mormon stuff, it's just
the
funny
only
what
reason
they
I
did.
brought it up, Josh, is just because you mentioned it. And
Fair
I was
enough.
I think that's funny, right? So it's just fun. All right. So just real quick, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I think I made my points, right? Amazon did say that this has drawn more viewers than any other of their releases. 25 million people showed up the very first day.
It
Okay.
sure better have.
Yeah.
For $1 billion.
Lots of people showed up, right? And I think I'm going to just kind of stick to my point that people who review things either really love it or they really hate it. And I think that's what's going on with this. Is there are a bunch of people who are being very vocal. I'm not going to say the R word because Josh is going to lose his mind, right? But
Just say
I think
it.
that's a big
Everybody
problem.
knows what you're talking about. Just say it.
I think a lot of people are really bothered that there's a diverse cast in what has historically not been a diverse cast movie, right? So if we look at the original Lord of the Rings franchise that was done by Peter Jackson and The Hobbit, those are pretty white movies. They're very white movies. Okay.
Yeah.
And because they threw in a diverse cast, suddenly people are not okay with that. And I think that's really interesting, right? It hasn't bothered me in the least. It really has not bothered me at all. And it didn't bother my son, didn't bother my wife. Are we just uber woke? And that's why we're like, oh, this is great. This fits my agenda. I don't know. Maybe Josh's point is valid that it's pulling people out of the series because they're just too focused on this. But I hate to say it, right? But why is it bothering you when it's not bothering? And I'm not calling you a racist, Josh. Please don't interpret
Except
that as me
you
calling you
are.
a racist, right?
You're calling
But-
everybody that doesn't like the movie racist. That's what
No,
you just
I'm not.
did. And then
You
you back
just-
off of it just 1% so you don't have to face that. That's what you did.
It's not what I did. I'm saying you're noticing race. I'm not noticing race.
You don't see color.
No, I do see
Good
color.
for you.
It just doesn't matter to the story, right? Race is irrelevant to the story to me. Is this a good story? That matters far more to me than who is playing the characters. Okay. And why is it bothering some people? I think that's an interesting question. If it's just a straight continuity thing, okay, legit, right? Like I could see that if your only understanding of the Lord of the Rings is Peter Jackson's movies where all the elves are white, all the dwarves are white, all the hobbits, with maybe some exceptions, are white. Like everybody's white, right? And that's your only understanding. And then you get this where it's pretty diverse cast and you're like, continuity doesn't work. If that's legit your concern, so be it. That's fine. I have no problem with that. That can be a legitimate concern. But it seems like something else might be going on here.
See, that right there. I just spent an hour telling you all my concerns, and they were continuity based. There's no continuity here, and that's what I just said. And then you just say,
I'll call it that.
"But there's something else going on there because all of you don't like it." So address this.
Josh, do you think that that's the problem for all of the people who are criticizing the movie?
99.9%, yes. Okay? Because you skipped over this. I gave you a like-for-like comparison. Nobody's having any problems with Game of Thrones, which was released at the same time and features a predominantly black cast in this one. And it has an 85% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Nobody has any problems with that. So just racists are attracted to Lord of the Rings and not Game of Thrones? Is that what you're going to... What's the difference? This is a like for like comparison. What's the difference?
Let me address that. I in my close Tommy's take here, if I can go into that, and I reworded my statement. What do you guys think of this? Hollywood is free to do whatever they want. If it hurts their viewership / sales, then they will have to deal with the consequences.
Agreed.
Is that a good?
That's what's been happening.
Basically, if they get to in your face about virtue and their wokeness or virtuosity or telling us their how we should be, then or what do you say, preaching to us, then it should reflect in the sales, right? And they'll have to deal with that.
Can I jump in? So Star Wars is a perfect example of this, right? The 7, 8, and 9 were super woke. Everybody hated them. All the fans went, "This is stupid. There's just overt messaging here." And what did they do? They responded with Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and the Ewan McGregor one, Obi-Wan, and everyone went, "Thank you. You went back to telling a good story. There's no overt messaging here. And there's diverse characters and all of that stuff, and it's fine. They just went back to telling good stories, and everybody's happy again." But they went super woke for 3 movies, and everyone went, "This is stupid. We hate it. You've ruined Star Wars." And then they went, "Oh, okay, we're pulling back," and then they went back to telling good stories.
The audience score for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is 86%.
What is it for the other ones?
Let me look.
Didn't you just say this is an unreliable metric?
You're the one using the metric, right? You're literally saying
you're the one when it suits you. You're jumping right back to it.
I'm pulling up the last 91% and 93%. Let's see for
audience scores.
I'm talking about the original
Star Wars. The Last Jedi is 42% audience score.
Okay, there we go.
And The Force Awakens is 85% audience score.
Yeah.
So of the 3, 85+% of the audience said it was good. Now the tomato meter is actually very different for each of these. Let me pull them up. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, 52% tomato meter. So that's the critics. 91% for The Last Jedi and 93% for The Force Awakens.
That might be the only movie I've ever agreed with the critics.
To Josh's point, though, if you look at the New Hope, it's at 96% for audience score. It's like clearly
that's also very nostalgic, right? I mean,
I'm saying it's a clearly beloved classic by everybody.
Sorry, Tom. Back to your take. I'm sorry.
All right. No, that was just my summary. I got my summary together, and I think I hopefully you guys both agree.
Yeah, with that. I think people will vote with their dollars whether this is too woke of messaging. And my sense, we'll see. Right, this is the nice thing. We can just kind of wait and see how this happens. I think it's going to do great. I think Amazon's going to do perfectly fine with this.
Well,
what's the metric? Is it just views?
well,
A lot of people.
You're right. There's no sales, right? So it's like viewership,
Yeah.
signups for Amazon Prime, right? It's
Like,
going to be hard for them to measure, and
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting because it's a very expensive movie. Therefore, what is the ROI on that, right? How many signups do they have to get before they say that it was a win? It's gonna be interesting, right? We watched it, but we already have a Prime account, the brothers and I. So it's like, I don't know, right? Would I have signed up to watch it if I didn't have one? And that's really the question. Was it going to draw people in? And hopefully that's the point of view. Maybe they're just saying this is an additional value to your existing membership. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they'll try to pad it because they're not going to want the most expensive franchise or series ever to be a flaming wreck. They're going to pound it however they can. Yeah, I don't know what the metric will even be on this one, and I'm probably going to watch at least a couple more episodes because my nephews and I were making fun of it. We're having a great time making fun of it. So
here's my take, and this is interesting. All right. So what I think is an issue here is like, so if you buy a franchise, you buy franchises for the fan base is what you buy them for, right?
Yeah.
So you're tapping into an existing fan base.
Yep.
And like, don't be surprised when people don't like it if you change certain elements of the story. And Ryan says race doesn't matter. And I think it shouldn't from a racism standpoint, but I do think it's weird that you're just, maybe you're just inadvertently changing it, or maybe you're changing it as an agenda, whatever, but you changed it. And that, I think you can, it's just like you said, it's the diehards that are going to go leave those comments, but that's what you bought it for those diehard fans. You bought that franchise for it. And so it's like, okay, that's the pullback that's the consequence, and that's fine. You can do whatever you want. You bought the rights for $250 million, or $250 million. So the issue I have is attacking article after article. It's attacking the fan base as racist because they're complaining about the changes that were made to the script, and I don't know if that's something I agree with. And I was actually going to bring up I had the exact same thoughts that Josh had on Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon. And it's getting a great score. And it has a big, it's a black house. It's a house.
I just looked at it. Most of the cast is white for the House of the Dragon.
Oh, they're mostly white.
They're mostly white. They're like three black characters in there.
Well, there's a whole house that they have introduced, is what it is. Is like, and it's probably just as many as what that representation.
Right. I mean, the Targaryens are a white family, right?
Yes,
they're a very white family.
Yeah.
If you watch the original Game of Thrones or read his books, I mean, it's pretty clear.
Right. But if there were more black people, it would not be doing good because we wouldn't like it.
Right. So I think it's the exact proportions of what you're saying.
Look at that right there. Yeah, you probably wouldn't because you're all racist. This is freaking insane. Do you want to know what when our last episode aired, after you called me and everybody in Utah and everybody at BYU racist,
which I never did, just to be clear,
which you exactly did, within an hour of the episode dropping.
So sensitive.
No, it's okay.
Everything I say,
it's just
if I
me.
bring up race, immediately you're like, you're calling me a racist.
No, that's why did I stop talking to you for 5 years?
Yeah, because I thought this was done. Then I did call you a racist, Josh. I have not called you a racist. You're still doing
it. No, you do it, you infer it, and then you step back.
And it's not infer, it's imply. And I'm not implying it. I've been very careful this whole time.
Then why did I get immediately? I had my phone started blowing up right after that episode dropped of people saying some variation of, "Will you thank your brother for calling me a racist with no evidence?" I had probably 6-7 people call me or text me immediately and say that. So it's just me that's saying Ryan's implying that I'm a racist? No, it's everybody. Because that's what you're doing. That's what you did. Okay, you did it to Tolkien. He's a racist, but I'm not going to quite say that. But he's definitely a racist. Okay, and anybody that doesn't like this show because they see black people,
do me a favor.
They're all racist.
Do me a favor, okay? How can we talk about race without you assuming that I'm calling you a racist?
Maybe
I don't
stop
think you
calling
can.
me a
I don't think we
racist.
can. I don't think we can.
We have in
I
previous
don't think we can.
episodes. We have
Honestly,
in previous
I'm
episodes.
done with it. I'm just done with it because every time I bring up race, the
No.
immediate response is, "You're calling me a racist."
No,
I-
it's only happened in 2 episodes.
Literally in the BYU episode, I didn't even say that BYU's racist. I didn't. I didn't even say everybody in Salt Lake is in Utah's racist. I never said anything of the sort. I said,
why did all those people?
there may have been a racist there. I didn't even say it was
No.
structural racism at BYU. I said there may have been a racist there.
So why did everybody that ever gives us feedback for the podcast? Why did every one of them go? Oh yeah, he just called me a racist. Why did every one of them?
How can we talk about race without you assuming that I'm
the only time that it's been an issue has been the last 2 episodes because you have very explicitly implied that I'm a racist and anybody that doesn't agree with you is a racist. Very explicitly, Tom agrees because that's what you were doing earlier with Tolkien. We've talked about race several times on the podcast. And it hasn't been an issue because you weren't just blatantly calling me a racist. This is why we stopped talking.
I have not called you a racist, Josh. On this podcast, I have not.
And this is why we're stopped doing this podcast because you
It's
guys
about to be.
stop fighting.
This is
well,
such a
and
sensitive issue.
Okay,
My
be
final
honest.
point.
Do you think? Just be honest, okay? All cards on the table here. Do you think I'm a racist?
No, I don't.
I think he is.
Well, in the sense that Tom used it, that we're all racists, that's fine, right?
Yes,
If we want to
exactly.
that's fine. But do I think
And you agree with that, right, Ryan?
dropping the N-word everywhere, right? No, I don't think that's who you are, Josh. I'm not saying that. I haven't said that going all the way back to when we stopped talking. I don't know how many years ago that was, 10 years ago or something like that, when I straight up said, Josh, you're a bigot. I have not said that. I'm not implying that. You keep inferring that. It's the correct use of the word, right? I'm not implying that. I'm saying there are lots of subtle nuances here where you can interpret things in lots of different ways. But every time I even bring up the word race, you immediately are like, why are you calling me a racist?
No,
And
I don't.
I haven't. I haven't called you a racist.
We can rewind it a minute ago.
Like that, Josh.
I don't remember what Tom was saying, but he was saying anybody that doesn't, anybody that watches these shows and sees the race, are they racist or they're not? And you just started nodding your head.
No,
which is a direct implication saying, yeah, they are.
What I said is, if your only issue is the continuity, props to you. That's a continuity issue.
Which I spent an hour saying it was. And then you still implied that I was racist.
No, I didn't.
Right there. It may be true for you. It may be true for you.
Okay. Let's say that it is. Great. That's true for you. Done. Problem solved. This is not a
Move on, Tom.
All right. The last thing I was going to say was if they want to modernize it, like, so if you put cars or planes into the Rings of Power movie, people would be like, you're like, I'm modernizing it to make it look like our world. People would be like, what the heck are you doing? And it's so obvious, right? And that's why it's like, it's okay. It's a fantasy world. You can do anything you want. You don't have to make it reflect anything. You can have something in there and you can have it and you can't have it in there. And so again, they can do whatever they want and they will deal with the consequences and they'll have to decide whether it was appropriate or not. But I do think, and I agree with Josh, though, that I do think there are better ways. I think Game of Thrones did it in a way that doesn't seem, and I like the word he used, preachy. And I think and I think that's actually going to help them. And from articles I've read, they're winning the viewership war as far as the two franchises competing against each other. Because I think they've done it in a better way. But that's, a little time will tell, and everyone gets to learn from how they did it. And so we'll see how it goes. All right. That was it. Got a little heated there. Anytime we kind of get a little around the race stuff, I think it always things always happen. I will say I didn't read this, but my brother told me that I guess BYU reviewed the tapes and they unbanned the fan that was accused of saying the derogatory comments to the player. So basically they said they didn't think that it wasn't him. It could have been somebody else, but they don't think it was him. And so it's either it was somebody else or or
It
that
never happened.
and she thought it was right, but she thought she heard it, and that's you know, and the problem is we'll probably never know. But interesting.
Except we do.
Update. Oh no. Anyway, I'm going to conclude this episode very quickly.
Probably should.
Things get out of
Let's
hand
go
here.
another year or two before we talk about race again.
We have
just
talked
way
about
too
it on
sensitive.
several episodes. I'm not sensitive about it. When you call me a racist,
my
I get mad about it. I'm not sensitive about it.
Josh, I didn't call you a racist. I haven't called you a racist.
Then explain why everybody said, thank your brother for calling me a racist. Because that's what they said. Because they either went to BYU or they're Mormon, they live in Utah. So explain that to me.
Now Ryan's going to be calling everyone who called you about being a racist. All right, we're going to cut this short.
We're all just super sensitive.
Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later.
Josh, we may not always agree when it comes to politics, even though we're trying, but there is one thing we agree on. There is only one way to clean up after going to the bathroom, and that's with a Lux bidet.
I've been a proud owner of a Lux bidet for years. I have literally owned a Lux Neo 320 since 2013. That's the warm water model. Talk about happy, fun, poopy time. When I leave the bathroom, I know I'm clean and ready to talk politics in a civilized manner.
Exactly. Using a toilet without a bidet is about as uncivilized as it gets. Civil conversations demand civil hygiene practices.
And that is why our listeners should get themselves a Lux bidet.
And just to be clear, Lux is not supporting one side or the other in this podcast. They support civil conversations and clean butts.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. The music is by Ben Sound. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not those of their employers. For more information or more episodes, you can find us at findingcommonbattlegrounds.com.
I didn't call anybody a racist in that last episode.
Then
Josh.
why
You
did
keep
seven
inferring.
people? Why did 7 people all infer the same
Hey,
thing?
I mean, we can go back and listen to the episode. What did I say? What did I say? Because you guys were trying to get me on this point of like, do you really think in this, auditorium of 4,000 people that not a single person was going to respond? And I was like, that's possible, right? I mean,
Sure.
if 4,000 people are screaming and one person is saying a derogatory term and you can't hear it, it's possible. And all of your friends took that as me saying they're all racists. How many of them were actually in the audience of the volleyball game?
This
None.
is
None.
This is a great I had so we were talking about, I was actually talking about this with my brother Matt, and he brought this up and it was so good, and I actually forgot about it, and I wanted to pull this up, but so I guess there's a bit on Bill Burr that he does about
I like Bill
racism.
Burr. I
Yeah.
like Bill Burr.
And he basically he says he was making some joke about, I should pose it up, but he was basically saying some joke about like, there's always this story, they're telling the story and it's like, oh, that black guy's never going to make it from this town. He's da, da, da. And that's the story. But he's like, it's never like that. He's like, racism's subtle. Racism's a look. Racism's a whisper, right? Racism's so subtle like that. And I totally agree with that like racism's not, oh, you a black dude, da, 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 and it's all outlandish. And that's why I actually think like that girl, I don't think so. I find it hard to believe that someone would just be yelling the N-word out, just yelling it loud enough that the woman could hear and nobody would, and
Over
like, oh,
and
yeah,
over and over again.
we're like this.
here's the thing.
But sorry,
I
let
agree
me,
with you, Tom. I actually agree with you.
and I if she thought she heard it, then that's
That's
totally
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think she thought she heard it.
and that's fine. And I think, and we'll probably never know. But what was it? Oh, what was I saying? So what I was saying was this is an interesting thing, is that because it's so nuanced, racism is so, and I don't know if you guys agree with me on this, but like I do think it's nuanced. It's the subtlety, it's the look, it's the looking behind you because there's a black person back there or something like that. I think that's what racism is. It's not outwardly like calling things out.
So can I add a little
It
nuance?
can
So
be.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to point out, like, as Josh was just saying, there were a couple of guys in Georgia who just killed a black guy, and they were
Yes.
convicted on this, right? So there are still the very blatant forms of
Yeah.
racism. The racism that you're describing today, most sociologists refer to this as colorblind racism, and it's exactly what you're describing, right? So
Yeah.
it's not people who are like dropping the N-word and just very derogatory toward black individuals or something like that. It's all those subtle things that you're talking about. I'm 100% on board with that. I
Yes.
absolutely agree with everything.
We're
That's
probably
the majority of racism today.
a large degree of it's subconscious, right?
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think
And-
that's absolutely true.
You can, and the reason I bring this up is I had an experience with a person who thought I was being not nice to them because they were a woman, and and I was like, what, right? But they were like made that connection, and like, I'm like, no, it's because I don't like you. I don't like the way you do these things. I don't like the way you do this and all this stuff, right? But they always, and that's why that subtlety is so dangerous, right?
Mhm.
It's like, oh, were you talking about me because I'm black? Or were you
Exactly.
talking about me because I'm a woman? And it can be so misinterpreted. And that's, I think, the danger of it, of this like kind of low key racism, right? What'd you call it? Colorblind
Racism.
Colorblind racism.
Yeah.
That's
Comes
what's so
from a guy
dangerous.
named Eduardo
It's
Bonilla
so-
Silva. Yeah.
It can be so misinterpreted and so misunderstood. And I think it's actually hurts the victim because it's hard for them to take accountability. They'll be like, oh yeah, I got fired from that job because I was black, or something like that. And you were like, was it, or was it because you weren't working hard enough? Right. It's like, and you can blame anything on those things. A person could do that. They could take that, the victim. That's why the victim road is hard, right? Is like, if you dive fully into the victimhood and drink the Kool-Aid, then I think it actually can deprive you, and is hard. Is there legitimate racism? Are they legitimate victims? Absolutely. Right. But like, it's a slippery slope and can be dangerous. And so that's, anyway, it's kind of a diatribe I wanted to go on, but that I'd been thinking about since we talked about that BYU thing. Anyway, I saw that. I got to find that Bill Burr clip, and I'll have to send it to you guys. But
Bill Burr's a genius. Of his observation on human nature is just unparalleled.
it's pretty good. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I like Bill Burr.
Probably
I
should
think
cut
he's
that.
good.
Probably should cut this off. This whole part.
Oh, I will. Is bonus content today that we love.
And Tommy's a racist.
No, I just agreed with everything that you said, right? I think the majority of racism today is the subtle, almost unconscious or subconscious stuff that people do. It's not the blatant, I'm going to go shoot this black jogger running through our neighborhood like those two, rednecks from Georgia did. That's a minority of the racism. There are still blatant racists, right?
Right.
But I think the majority of it is exactly what you're describing. And a lot of it's not even intentional. I don't think people are doing it.
Subconscious.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just do it unintentionally. So
here's the other side of the coin to Tommy's point. I'm like Tom. I hate everybody equally. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. Or if you're a douchebag, I'm going to call you a douchebag. But I couldn't criticize Obama without being called a racist. He's a freaking socialist. I don't like his policies. If I had to choose if I was going to hang out with him or Trump, I'd hang out with him. He seems like a much cooler guy. But I couldn't criticize him. I was called a racist continually because I criticized his policies. But that's the problem with this. It's so easy to, you see how that's the other side of the coin of what Tom's describing here with this.
Yeah.
And I agree with the colorblind racist thing. Everybody has these neuroses built in. I don't want to admit it, but if I get on a plane and there's a couple dudes there with turbans on their head, I'm gonna think twice. I'm gonna think
everyone
twice,
thinks
right?
that thought.
Because we're kind of programmed to do that to a point.
We've associated it with it. Yeah.
That's the association. So it's almost inescapable at this point. This is the conflict here, right? I'm not racist, and Ryan said I don't think you're racist. But when then I say, well, I don't like this show, and Ryan says, well, And it's probably because you're racist, or there's something to that, or maybe it's something more.
Okay.
Well, that's a direct. I mean, you see what you're doing.
I see what I'm doing. I'm very
Maybe this is a good opportunity for us to restate each other's points here, because
Right.
I'm not the only one. You keep saying I'm too sensitive about it. I'm not the only one to, oh, that douchebag just called me a racist. Everybody that listens to the podcast just went, oh, Ryan just called us all racist.
Mhm.
It wasn't just
I
me. If it was just me, if
Well-
it's just one person, you can say, okay, you're probably wrong.
No.
If it's two people,
What
you
were
can say,
trying to say,
maybe
Ryan?
you're wrong.
Well,
I know what he was trying to say,
Well, that's
but he didn't say it.
well, no, hold on. Okay. Torin, before this podcast, right? Before I came in here, he's like, good luck. Josh is going to assume that you're calling him a racist.
Your indoctrinated son who thinks the same as you. Okay.
Okay. Do
got
you
it.
see what I'm saying? Right. Like,
Sure.
as soon as because let's pause and unpack this for a second, right? What you said is they put Black actors into the rings of power, and it caused continuity issues
Yes.
in your mind. Okay.
Not just my mind. Look at that meme.
That's fine. Look, I know, and the meme is funny now that I recognize what he's trying to do. Right? I didn't get the second face initially, but so it's in your mind, it's a continuity issue.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's a continuity issue that's triggered by race.
I totally disagree
Sure.
with Josh.
You
I
see
totally
that?
disagree with Josh. Don't Josh, do you not think more than a continuity issue, it's that the producers are saying you need to have this diversity. You need to
That's why they did it. That's why they
That's
did
why they
it.
did it. Sure.
And so
Yes.
so it's an overt preachiness.
Yes,
But
exactly.
if there
That's not a-
wasn't, I mean, and that's mainly my problem with Galadriel, right? That's the overt preachiness. The race part, it just breaks the continuity, because like with the Dwarven King, I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure he's the dad of one of the dwarves that we've already seen, who's white. You just go,
But-
what?
But like so when I was talking about all the women in the
Marvel
in the Marvel thing,
yes. Hmm.
it takes you out because it's contrived. You're like, oh,
That
all
one
these
was.
women,
I'm
all these,
going to concede that one. That one
But-
was very contrived.
but that
Yeah.
I see. I'm bringing up. I'm saying that's exactly the same thing, because that's all of a sudden like, oh, look, in every scene, every race has a 5% Black group representation in, and who cares about Asians or Hispanics? But we're gonna put
Exactly.
the Blacks in
That's
there.
part of the
Wasn't-
other problem.
It was an Asian elf, actually. I saw it.
There was an Asian Harfoot, but
Yeah.
but the fact that they were prominent,
I didn't even
Blacks
notice that.
were the other ones
There's just
was-
one.
is
Yeah.
so contrived, it pulls you out. You're like, oh, we
Exactly.
just
Okay,
stuck this
but-
person in,
Okay.
and
so
that's so I'm saying it's
and I get
exactly
your
the
point.
same.
I get your point. I'm just trying to be clear here in saying, like, how can I say, okay, and this is just me trying to get at this. How can I say, okay, it's race that causes you to recognize the continuity and preachy issues? Okay. So that's what you're saying. You're saying the real issue is that it breaks continuity and it becomes preachy, right? That's what you're saying the real issue is. Am I right on that?
I'm not
It's
saying
one
break-
of the real
I'm saying
issues.
it's
Right.
contrived. It's
Okay, that's
contrived,
fine.
and it's preachy.
But
yeah,
it's race that makes you aware of it.
right.
Sure.
So as soon as I point that out and say, why is it race that makes you aware of it? Then immediately Josh goes, why are you calling me a racist?
That is not what happened.
You see what I'm saying?
That is
Like,
not
I
what
can't-
happened.
Can you
That's
just
not what
listen
you
to me for a
did.
second? But-
I've been listening to you
but
for an hour.
listen.
That is not what happened.
Okay, I give up, right? Because all I'm trying to say is, like, race is actually what's making you aware of the issue,
Sure.
right? Race is what's doing it. And
Sure.
as soon as I say, oh, race is what's doing that,
No,
then you immediately go, why are you calling me a racist? And I'm like,
that's not what
I'm
happened.
literally just saying what you said. You said race led me to think that there was a continuity issue or it was preachy. And I'm like, yes, we agree. We agree.
Go back and
Race is
listen,
what did that.
because that's not a problem. That's not what you said.
What did I say? then?
Because then we go back to this thing. Well, why do people not like it? Well, because of race. That's a totally
Which
different
is
thing.
exactly
No,
right.
no, no.
Race leads
That's
to,
not what you're saying.
if we, but Josh,
Okay, I think I'm actually starting to see
You
the
see?
disconnect here.
it's, well, because it's a causal chain, right? So you're saying, no, the reason people don't like it is because of the continuity and it's preachy. But what leads them to think that it's a continuity issue and it's preachy? Race.
Right.
Okay, is that racist?
Right.
I'm totally
In
with
your
you on this
definition.
so far.
I'm not even
Ryan.
trying to say that it's
Well,
racist.
I'm asking, is
You
that
see what I'm saying?
racist?
What-
Is it racist that I noticed that there are
You're
black
saying-
people in this movie
I
and
don't,
not black
I don't
people in that
know
movie?
if that's racist. I'm saying
That
race,
because you know
is-
it's not racist. You okay? You're walking around it. You say I don't think you're racist, but is what I'm saying racist?
No. Okay,
Then
and
quit-
this is where I think the disconnect is actually happening. I don't think what you're saying is racist. I'm saying, can we just recognize that it's race that's triggering the other problems? If we pull it back to a causal chain, race leads to the other problems. So you can't say that race is irrelevant to this. Race is clearly relevant. And that's
Yes.
why I use the term
I never-
racialize. I didn't
Race
call
does
anybody
matter.
at all a racist.
Yeah,
in this
nobody
episode.
said that race was irrelevant. Nobody said that.
Right.
Well-
And that's all I'm saying is that your connection, if we draw it back in a causal chain, it's the fact that you see the dwarf king is married to a black dwarf, right? That causes an issue. for
Yes.
you, okay. So race is what then leads to the other problems. And I didn't say, I never once
Which is
said
fine.
that
But
makes
then
you a
you
racist. I
you
didn't
keep-
say it makes you a racist. I never once said the word
sure
racist. did I?
you didn't.
I didn't.
But then you keep inferring it.
Well,
or
because
implying
race
it,
is
whichever
at the
way you want to
beginning
say
of the
that.
causal chain.
But then you imply that I'm racist. That's what you keep
did.
implying.
It's,
Everybody took it that way. Everybody that listens to the podcast took it that way. And everybody, I
Okay.
guarantee, as soon as this drops, they're all going to take it that way
yes,
again.
they're-
So-
you're right. They
So
are.
what am I doing wrong? What am
No, but
what am I doing wrong?
what am I doing
I'm not the
wrong?
only one that's seeing this.
But do you see what I'm saying? What am I doing wrong that I can't point out that race is leading to the other issues, and then everybody else is like, then why are you calling me a racist? And I was like, I didn't. I just said what caused you to see the problems was that there were diverse, racially
This really
diverse
should be the
characters.
podcast because this is the big disconnect. You don't
You see
think
what I'm
that you're
saying?
implying that I'm trying to see what you're saying. You don't think you're implying that anybody's racist,
Right.
but you keep like nodding your head or shaking your head or going, well, if they don't like it, they're probably racist. Like you
They're
keep saying stuff like
seeing-
that.
Right. They're seeing race. And
Okay,
that's
so you're
leading
saying
to the other
that is
problems.
racist because I'm seeing that somebody's black
No.
and there's black people in this movie,
No.
not black people in this movie.
You're
That's-
saying,
that's-
Ryan, you're saying race is the trigger to
Race is the trigger that leads to the other problems.
Is
Yeah.
that inherently racist?
No. Okay. Can I just be?
Okay, then
that
stay
does
that.
not put you. That does not put you on the same level as a KKK member or a white.
Does it put me on? And does it put me on a different level than you? Are you better than me because you don't see
I'm
race?
not
Is that what you're
trying
saying?
to say that I'm better than you. I'm
Okay,
not.
so what's the level thing? Why bring up the level thing?
What do you mean the level thing?
You just said that doesn't put you on the same level as what level does it
Oh,
put me?
I
on?
see what you're saying. Okay, so just
it
because
makes
somebody
you
sees
a mini
race-
racist.
Yeah, that's again, that's the implication.
but
That's
right, it is
that's
So
the
how
how
people
can I?
take it.
So how can I even talk about this then? Because
Quit
literally,
saying
you're saying the
douchebag
same
stuff
thing I'm
like,
saying.
well, that doesn't put you on my
It's-
level.
The
but it
problem
puts
is,
you on-
Ryan, so here's the thing. I am totally open to talk about, like, I'm a racist, right? Of like, because I think from that
Because we're
standpoint
all
of like,
racist,
we
of
all
course.
are, right? Yes. And
I'm
I
fine.
always have to say that
I've
afterwards.
always agreed with that.
Because racist is such a trigger word for me
It
to
is.
say I'm a racist. All of a sudden, like, oh, you're the worst person in the world, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, but we all are. Then everyone's like, oh, okay, I know what you mean, right? And we're like, oh, well, sure. And I think that's the issue: is racist is the biggest trigger word in the world. I've yet to ever meet a racist, right? Because nobody's
I've
a
met-
racist, but yet everyone's
some.
racist.
The overt racist, I
They're
do,
rare.
but
The overt
Yes, there
racists
are some
they're
real
rare,
racists,
but they'll actually admit it. They'll either say, yeah, I'm a racist,
Yeah.
or they'll say something obvious like, I'm not a racist, but I don't like black people. Like, I mean,
to me,
they're overt
racist
about it.
is what communists used to be in the McCarthy era, right?
Yes,
of like
that's why I
everyone,
want to use it.
they're all over the place. There's communists. Oh, I'm not a communist. Neither am I.
McCarthy was kind of right. That's,
but like,
but-
nobody talks about that.
But can we just like get to the point? Like when I was describing Tolkien, I never once used the word racist, and both of you were like, "You mean he's a racist?" I'm like,
what
Can I say-
That's what you
racialization?
were
What the heck?
implying.
racialized is a term.
You
that we
implied
use.
it,
Okay,
but you implied
but
it
do you see what I'm saying,
explicitly.
though? No, I didn't imply it. You can't imply something explicitly. Implying means it's implicit. That's literally the definition, Josh. But
except it was overt. It was
No,
an
it wasn't.
overt
I was saying-
implication.
I was
said
saying
that
he wrote race into his world.
and
he
that he put
created
a
it.
hierarchy,
And then he
of
put a hierarchy.
Put a
in
hierarchy.
where
hierarchy,
whites
okay?
are better, and
Which is an
and-
implication that
dark-
he's racist. And we called
The
you out and said,
implication.
well, I'm not going to go that far.
Because
When
if
you say, I'm not going to go
what-
that
what did
far,
Tom just say? What did Tom
you
just
think
say?
that
If
you're just
I
not
call
going to say
Token
it.
a racist, then I look like the asshole because I can't go out calling people a racist. I can't do that.
But
That's
you're
just-
saying,
But you
okay.
can
you're
imply it.
saying he is
I'm saying race factored into what he did,
right,
and I think we all agree on that.
But here's the
true.
disconnect, Ryan.
See-
Because I think you're actually right. I think Tolkien had some racism in his thing, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, the elves are white and pure, and they're the
he's
higher
a
race.
product of his time.
But as soon as you say he's a racist, it's
Then I've
like,
lost the argument. It's done.
well, and that what I'm saying, it's such
You
a trigger
haven't,
word.
though.
You've just condemned him as like one of the worst people in the world, right? That's
why I
the
can't say
problem.
it. Yeah.
It's a trigger word. It's
Mhm.
like,
But that's not
you
the
didn't
problem.
even say racist, but even when you implied it, then we're like, oh, yep, he had problems.
That's
with
the
race.
problem. Okay, so look what happened in the podcast. Tom and I both said, no, he's racist. He was like in the 1800s. Tom and I both said racist. You just implied it. But I'm not going to go there. You come across as so judgy and demeaning, and I'm not racist. I'm just going to imply he's racist. So I get your hesitancy to say that, but
So-
Tom and I both just
Get with.
came out and said it.
So I can't
But
say
that's not
do you see what I'm saying?
That's not
I can't
the
say I
problem.
can't even say anything about race.
It was your
If I
no.
apply
It was your total
or if I
approach.
Say it, I lose.
If you would have said what Tom and I said, if you would have said, well, he was born in the 1800s.
I
Everybody's
did.
racist back then.
That's how I started.
And then you
That's
danced
literally
around it
how I
and
started.
implied it.
Because if I say
It's
he's
the
a racist,
implication.
I lose.
Well,
I
and
can't
s-
say it.
Well, Tom,
I
Tom and I,
I
So I
Tom and I
said,
both said it.
are you're saying he's a racist? And you're like, he's used racialization. And I'm like, I
Because-
don't even know what that
because
means.
if I say he's racist, then I get labeled woke and I'm just an asshole and it's in game over.
but Tom,
Right.
but Tom and I can say
it's the same thing.
Apparently, because then your friends don't think that you're saying anything bad.
Well,
I don't
You're
get
missing
it,
the point.
Josh,
You're
I
missing the
genuinely
point.
don't get this.
but what
I
you're
can't say anything.
what the example you just used, Josh, right there with Ryan, it's exactly what happened with the BYU thing, where Ryan was like, well, maybe somebody was saying the N-word and no one stopped him, right? Because that was what I was saying. I was saying that was not impossible, but very
Improbable.
plausible.
It's unlikely.
Improbable, yeah.
It's unlikely.
And
Sure.
I was saying, really, could that? I was dubious of that, and you were saying,
It's
and
possible.
and you were in I think it did infer racism,
Imply
but-
racism. Yes. Sorry.
and
Infer and
and
imply mean specific things. Sorry.
what does infer mean?
Infer is when you interpret it. Imply is when I give the impression. So it's the distinction, right? So
I
infer,
did use it.
receive it.
I inferred
been
it and
using it.
you implied it.
There you
And,
go. You got it
I,
right.
I used it incorrectly earlier.
Yes.
And you, so I
Well,
think you
But
did.
then you took another
and-
step. When I said no,
but
it's so improbable that it happened. You immediately went, oh, you're just going to dismiss her. So you don't care that she's a victim and the woman said anything. So it's immediately another implication. You're implying again that I'm a bigot and that I don't like women or black people. It was an immediate implication, and
Okay.
that's how everybody took it. And
I
then you
know.
keep saying that it's my fault and it's all of us. Well, no, you're doing something wrong.
Okay.
That's what we need to
Then
get.
what can I say? How do I address this? And that's a genuine question. Because
I
if
think you should throw it out
say
to
explicitly,
us, because I
I
think
get screwed. If I imply it, I'm screwed.
you
quit
should-
implying that people are racist.
No,
Then
I
just
think
call
it's
them racist?
fine. I think it's fine.
If they are, just say what it is. That's
or
the
even
problem.
or even ask us what we thought, because I would be interesting if you were like, what do you think about the Brigham Young thing, right? And be like, I would like to, because and I think we said it, because I think I even said it. I was like, I think Utah does have some, like, we're a very white state, right? And it's
Sure.
like and I don't think that implies that we're racist, but I do think it's this whole thing I talked about, the color blind racism, where
right.
we're usually very aware that there's
But
a black
that's a
person
different thing,
bias.
because we were
I do.
talking
I think
about
it is a different thing.
overt racism. That's what
Yes.
we were talking about. And the immediate implication. Again, when I said it's so unlikely that this happened, and you had just admitted today, you didn't admit last time,
Right.
that it was very unlikely that anybody called her that, because there's so many people
Well,
listening Nobody else heard it.
We don't
Maybe
know
it
that
happened, but it
somebody
was
didn't do it. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. We don't know.
okay. But
What
it's
she
unlikely.
heard is
It's
fine.
unlikely. Okay. And that's what I was saying. It's so unlikely that this happened. And I admit, maybe she heard, I said Nigeria. Maybe somebody screamed it. Okay. Maybe she thought she heard something, but it's so unlikely that it happened and nobody else heard it and nobody did anything that it probably didn't happen. Like this is such a small percentage that it might have happened. And you immediately implied that I was sexist and bigoted. That's the kind of thing that people have problems with, because you did. And you can say you didn't, but you said, oh, we're just going to dismiss.
Yes.
What did you say?
I did say that. I said, so you're going to dismiss what she said. Now, here's the key
And the
thing.
way you said it was
Did
an
I-
immediate implication that
Okay.
I was bigoted. That's
Well,
the problem.
Okay,
That's
hold
what
on.
people start bristling about. That's what I bristle
I
about
know.
because
I know.
it's stupid. How is
Okay.
that helpful? And that's why we stopped talking.
I didn't imply that. You inferred that.
I
You see
inferred
what I'm
it,
saying?
and I do.
Yes.
And everybody else listening
Mhm.
inferred that.
Yes.
So who has the problem?
And this is why I'm asking you, how do I do this? If I want to raise points, if I want to say something, right? All I do is just like open my mouth. Anything about sexism and racism, those are trigger points on this podcast. The second I imply anything, whether I intend to imply it or not,
Only the last two
immediately
podcasts.
gets interpreted
Only
as
the
like,
last two podcasts.
why are you calling me a racist? And I'm just like, fuck, I don't know. Like,
Only the last two
It's-
podcasts. So what's different about that? What have you done
Well,
differently?
they were based on race.
Well, we've talked about race several times, and there's never been this issue before. So what are you? I mean, I don't know how to help you here. All I know is when you know, when one person doesn't like you, it's probably them. When two people don't like you, maybe them, maybe you. When 9 people don't like you, you've done something stupid, right? This was to Tom's point earlier, right?
It's Ryan's it's a hard spot where Ryan's at. I guess it's just because like as soon as you say Token's a racist, it's like, well, then he's Hitler, right? You
Yeah,
put him
well,
with
he's
Hitler.
But you can
and-
preface it by saying everybody in the 1800s was racist, and that
that's
puts you in
literally
a
what I
frame
did.
of mind.
That's literally what I did tonight. I said he was born in 1896 and died
Okay.
before any of us were born.
And then you kept implying the racism
Because
instead
if
of
I
just
call him a
saying
racist, can I just say that?
yes. If you say,
And
well, you know, everybody in the
what would you
1800s was
respond?
racist.
He's a product of his time. I mean, I literally said he was a product of his time. That
That
was
would have been
in my notes. I literally said that.
yeah.
something about the way that you're approaching that. And I'm trying to help you here because
I want the help because
something
every
about the way
time I
you're
do
approaching
this-
that. It happened tonight. Maybe we need to go back and listen to it. But it's like you're in your ivory tower preaching down to us, going, you know, you won't notice race. I didn't notice race when I was watching this. You
No,
must.
what it is Ryan, you'll go up to the edge, but you won't go through it. And both Ryan, Josh, and I opened the door. We're like, so he's racist, and we both were
Yeah.
kind of like, we kind of think he's racist in his writings and stuff like that, right? And we could see where
Well,
you
but that's
get
not
that
how you
from.
framed it. You said, "So are you saying he's racist?"
Yes, I'm trying to get
and
you.
it's
through
almost
the-
like you're baiting me. Right?
Oh,
It wasn't
no.
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
It's like
because
you're
both of
baiting
us
me, like,
agreed.
just say he's racist. And I'm like, but if I say he's racist, then this is another instance of the woke liberal asshole just calling people racist.
yeah, and
Right? It's a
true.
lose-lose proposition for me. If I
Well-
imply it, I'm a jerk. If I say it, I'm a jerk. I can't win with this. And this is why I'm like, I just really don't want to talk about race on this podcast.
Well,
anymore,
you
because
should.
it's always a lose proposition for me.
Yeah, and that's hard. I mean, my gut would be you should say, well, what do you guys think? Right? He was raised this way. He put this in his writings. What do you guys? Do you think he had some racist tendencies? And because I think we both say, yeah, he does. Because I think that's pretty much what we did say.
Well,
but I was
exactly what we
trying
You,
to.
you said that. Josh said that's not relevant.
No, you said.
right.
But I
Josh
agree with
said he
Tom.
was
That
raised.
everybody in the 1800s is racist.
Yeah, you said that. You
I said that.
Well, you said everyone in the 1800s was probably like it was a different time and race was
Yeah,
different.
they're all a
You said-
product of their time. I said something along those lines. I
You were kind of
agreed.
agreeing. Yeah.
And then you just kept doing this weird
Racialized.
implication thing. Like
Well,
you didn't want, like you were just wanted to there's something about the way you're coming off. Maybe I need to think about this.
Please do. And if
I-
you've got a better solution, because I can't win here. And all I mean by win is I
Right.
can't say things without people assuming that I'm just calling everybody a racist. And that's not what I'm trying to do.
But do you see why it came across that way with the BYU thing?
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
So state
Ryan,
to me
exactly how
why.
that comes through.
So
do you
state
think you're
it for me.
racist, Ryan? Are you racist?
Yes, in the same sense that you mean it, Tom, right?
Yeah,
That like
well,
everybody's a racist? Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
And I would
I don't think you go to KK meetings and wear a hood.
No. I don't do that, right?
Okay.
Do
Thanks
I
for clarifying.
certainly recognize?
I knew, of course I know that, right?
Yeah. But do I see race? Certainly, right? And I think I still am a product of the 1970s and 80s upbringing in Utah. Not to shit on Utah. I'm not trying to shit on Utah, right? I'm saying I was raised in a very white culture where exactly what Tom was saying. When I see a black person, immediately I'm like, just making a note of that, right? Like cognitive note, there's a black person following me, right? I still do that. I still do that, right? And I think it's because growing up in Utah, like that's what we did, right? We were aware that somebody was different and all those stereotypes.
One of these guys is not like the other.
Right. So it's not that I never see race. Did I immediately, when I was watching the Rings of Power, when they introduced the Dwarf King's wife, I was like, oh, she's black. Of course I saw that. Right.
Right.
It just
you actually said, well, I didn't see that. I didn't.
No. I said
that's what you said.
Maybe I did.
It didn't matter. It just didn't register as like, this is causing problems for the show. Right.
I thought she was not the best actress, to be honest. I thought she was
terrible.
But that's an acting issue. It has nothing to do with her race. I just didn't think she was very good, right? I actually liked the writing there. I thought it was actually a kind of a fun exchange because Elrond is trying to be like, he's trying to work his way in and soften things with the Dwarf King. And he's not succeeding because the Dwarf King's pissed off, right? And then she comes in.
It was so petty. Did you guys like that?
It was it was very petty,
he's mad that he didn't come to his birthday.
Yes.
It's like, oh my god, this guy's petty. A king?
Well, yes, but
petty.
Elves do live, indefinitely. They're immortal. So for Elrond, 20 years is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket.
I get that, but he was mad that he didn't come to his birthday party.
So, but I thought the whole kind of like how she softened the situation, I thought that was fine. I just didn't think her acting was great. I didn't think her acting was great. But that's not a commentary on her race. Didn't matter to me, right? Whether he's married to a white woman, a black woman, an Asian woman.
That didn't matter to me either.
Right.
What I was thinking about was their son.
I forget his name. Matters to me. That whole thing matters to me.
Well, it's not Thorin because it's got to be Thorin's dad. Is who it would have to be because Thorin Oakenshield.
No, I don't think it was Thorin. It was one of the dwarves on the original. I need to look that up.
That's fine
because I recognize the name.
Right.
No, so my biggest issue with the Rings of Power was that, like, okay, each episode's an hour, right?
Yes,
and it's like, how long is the Lord of the Rings movie? It's 2.5 hours, right?
Well, it's like 3 of them each cut through 2.5 hours. Yeah.
If you do the extended, if you do,
then they're 3 hours a piece. It's 9 hours. Of
but
video,
they told like if you do Fellowship of the Rings, they tell a whole story, open shut, 2.5 hours, and it's like I got that first hour and I'm like, we're just barely like getting into things, barely. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, it was like I'm waiting for something to happen the entire time. And I'm like,
pacing's terrible.
The pacing is slow. It's very slow.
But here's the problem is like, I watched a great movie on the difference between Captain Marvel and Captain America. And they were showing like Captain America that like when he jumps on the grenade, he's the weakling, right? Remember, he's the weak guy, and he's in basic training, and he jumps on the grenade at the very beginning, and it's a fake grenade, right? And it's showing you that he'll do his character. And then they show in Captain Marvel, they show how everyone keeps telling her how powerful she is or how kind she is. I can't remember. They keep telling her some character trait. They tell it over and over, and they're like, you don't tell it. You show it. And that's why you don't.
It's a rule of writing.
That's why you don't have endless dialogue in your movie. You show it through the things they do, not telling you. And all it was talking heads over and over and over. And now we're talking blah, 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 and now we're talking blah, blah, blah. And there was like that one battle scene with the bird, that giant bird came crashing down, and then Galadriel's brother dies. And it's like so fast, right? It was like, and there was a big battle. And then now let's go back and we're going to talk about the stuff. And we're like, okay. I'm like, I'm kind of tired.
Bad storytelling.
It was bad. It was really bad. And like
But-
for such an amazing budget, and like you would get subpar writers.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not even going to try and defend that. I already said like the pacing is really slow, and the critics are all pointing out that the pacing's slow. When they spent that kind of money, you know they're going to spread this out because they want more viewer eyes on it, right? So this is
guess.
effectively like Harry Potter
Oh.
episode 7-8, right?
Oh,
That was one
it's the
book,
Hobbits.
they turned it into 2
Okay.
movies, right?
The Hobbit's one small book, and they turned it into
Yeah,
three
they turned it into 3 movies.
Yeah.
The pacing's okay. They invented a lot of crap, like the Goblin King part stuff and I didn't really like a lot of what they did. But the pacing was okay.
More isn't always more.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. That said, right, if you actually dig into the Silmarillion and all of the other books and stories and pieces that Tolkien wrote and then his son has added to, there's a lot of content there. You could spend years mining this
There's a
content
ton.
and filling in details that obviously aren't
But
there,
a lot
right?
of the pacing with like, I stopped reading the Silmarillion
Oh, it's awful.
because it's
I've
really
never
boring.
read it. Yeah,
A lot of info dumping.
Mhm.
Yeah, not good. Not nearly as good as Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I totally agree. I did the same thing, and now I'm going back and I'm going to try and read them just because I
Oof.
want to fill in the details.
Oof.
I don't know if I'm going to make it. That said, I did just finish the Safehold series by David Weber.
Same problem.
Oh my gosh, his last 3 books, he shouldn't even have written them. He should have just stopped. He should have had one like quarter book, right? Like quarter of the last book 7 or something, or 6, where he just wrapped up the story, because the last 3 books were just completely worthless. But I had to finish it. I just had to finish. I was like,
I didn't. I stopped it.
It was pretty bad. So anyway,
My brother Murray says there is a cut of The Hobbit, which is about 2.5 hours. So it takes the 3 movies, cuts them down into one.
Really?
And he says it's pretty good. It just
I'm
cuts
really
out, it
surprised.
cuts out a whole bunch of silly stuff.
That would be good. Because there was some good stuff, some really good characters in there, but there was some really silly stuff.
Yeah. It got a little ridiculous.
but I do enjoy watching all 9 hours of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I've got the extended
You
cuts.
like The Hobbit?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought that was atrocious. That was
Yeah.
just,
really.
yeah, that was horrible, in my opinion.
Well,
Like, especially the first one, it was one long chase scene. It's like, what is
Yeah.
going on?
do
It
keep
got
in
a
mind
little
when I'm
ridiculous.
when I'm watching movies, I'm rarely just watching movies. I'm usually like, fiddling with something or organizing things on my computer or something like that. So it gets 70% of my attention, and that's perfectly fine, right? If I'm looking to do stuff while watching something, it's great to have in the background, gets 60 to 70% of my attention, and then I'm working as well. So I'm fine, right? Watching for 3 hours the first
Okay.
part of the show.
I just had this thought. Let's wrap this up. Are we going to air this? Maybe we throw this challenge out there to the people that give me feedback, because nobody gives Ryan feedback.
Except my wife.
Why
That's it.
why do you think Ryan is coming across as insulting and calling us racist? Because I got it this time. I got it last time. A lot of you guys got it last time. Can you explain that? Because Ryan's not seeing it. I'm starting to see the disconnect here. This is the whole purpose of the podcast,
Yeah.
is to try to figure out why we're having these disconnects. He doesn't think that he's being insulting
I
here
don't
and calling
think
us
I'm calling
racist.
people racist, but I
But
know
we're all hearing
they're
that.
gonna take it that way. I know people are going to take it that way.
So
Tell me that they're
why?
doing it. They're going to, and I don't know.
No,
And
I'm not asking you. I'm asking
Ask
our
them.
listeners, because you
I
clearly
think
don't
we'll-
know why you're coming
Right.
off as a
I don't.
douchebag.
but think about, like, I can literally give you the text that I use to describe my second question today. It starts with, do we want to discuss the possibility that Tolkien himself was a product of his time? That's literally the first part of it. Born in 1892 and died in 1973, before any of us were born. And he suggested that the characters in his novels followed something of a racial hierarchy, right? So I'm starting out with everything that you told me I should do. Put him in his context, say that it's a different time period. And I just didn't want to call him a racist, because if I do that,
I'll go
I'm a
back and listen
bastard.
to this.
right? But if I'm
Okay.
a racist, I'm still a woke bastard by implying that he's a racist.
No, quit being a victim.
No, I'm not trying to be a victim. I'm trying to
I
arrive at
know.
how can we have a
Okay, we're
conversation
trying to
about
find the
this if I
disconnect.
don't
So
do
I'm
this?
throwing this out there to my you all know who you are. My boys that give me feedback here. Let me know what you think on this. If you listen to all this crazy bonus content of us rambling and all coming off across as racist, where do you guys see the disconnect? I would love to hear your feedback, because this is getting to the root of the about to be civil war in our country, because there's a clear disconnect here that's happening. Ryan is explicitly stating he doesn't think that I'm a racist or that you guys are racist, but we all heard that in the last 2 podcasts. What do you guys think's going on? I'm going to give this some thought. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback. Maybe we'll turn this into a podcast, because this is interesting to me. What's happening right here? Hopefully, we can get some concrete something on this. Thanks for listening for 2 hours. You guys are freaking champs.